Der Österreicher hat ein Vaterland, liebt es und hat Ursache es zu lieben. Dieses Österreich ist nach dem Großen Weltkrieg, dem gerade die Deutschen dieses Landes zu den besten Verteidigern unserer Heimat geworden sind, zerrissen worden. Das kleine Österreich ist uns wieder als Heimat geblieben. Wirtschaftlich ausgeblutet, wirtschaftliche Zusammenhänge zerrissen, Vertrauen in unsere eigene Kraft erschüttert. Seelisch zerrissen hat dieses Land eine neue Geschichte begonnen. Wirtschaftliche Schwierigkeiten, soziale Spannungen und noch mehr die politische Verhetzung haben in unserem Heimatland in den ersten 14 Jahren ein wirkliches vaterländisches Gefühl, wirkliche Heimatliebe kaum aufkommen lassen. So hat diese Regierung, der die vaterlandstreue Bevölkerung vertreten fühlt und fühlen kann, es übernommen, der wirtschaftlichen Schwierigkeiten Herr zu werden, den sozialen Frieden in dem Lande wiederzugeben und auch seelisch dieses Volk neu aufzubauen, Liebe zur Heimat wieder lebendig zu machen. So stehen wir vor dem Neubau unserer Zeit. Wir werden auf wirtschaftlichem Gebiet in der Sicherung des Friedens konsequent weitergehen. Wir wollen in der Abwehr jeder so weit gehen, als man uns da nicht will. Darauf kann man sich aber verlassen. Dieses in jeder Situation gewachsen. Im Großen Weltkrieg richten an alle Österreicher den Appell, Einzel zu bewahren, verteidigen Volksverfassungen nachzubauen und treu zum Vaterland zu stehen. Nein, in Österreich ist überall der kapitalistische Gesellschaft und Wirtschaftsordnung. Wirtschaftliche ausgeglichtener Volksverführung, wirtschaftliche Zusammenhänge, demagogischer Volksführung, Vertrauen in unsere eigene Parteiherrschaft ist vorüber. Wir wollen dieses Jahr eine neue christliche und deutsche Staat Österreich auf ständischer Grundlage unter starker autoritärer Führung geben. Führer, die uns dabei die Liebe zum Vaterland, die Führer einmal dabei der Glaube, wenn sich Österreich über alle, wenn es so will.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I just realized.
How's it going?
It's doing good. I'm going to start to stream now because they'll hear me talking on the audio. It's weird. OBS is like, it'll hear us talking even though it's like, still says streaming.
Sure. I mean, so we're going to be talking about, the future of America?
Yes. The solutions that will bring about our goals within Western institutions, but also, I guess, focus
more. Yeah, no problem. Didn't really like to. I do kind of like to avoid like the endless speculation, but in terms of like, basically, my vision is that I think that America as a country, and I'm from Canada, so this applies to Canada too. It basically applies to both. As countries, they're done for, but I don't think that necessarily like Western kind and European civilization is done for in North America. I think it's kind of a matter of what's going to be brought out of that.
Yeah.
Like good.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rightcast episode 4 with Endeavor. The episode name is The Tower of Globalism, and the reason why is because we're treating globalism in the Western world, especially America, as like the Barad-dûr in Lord of the Rings. Eventually, when we win, it's going to come tumbling down in a grand spectacle. I really hope, they build like, and a rainbow tower in DC, and when the conflict is finished, that tower just crumbles. That would be pretty funny. But so yeah, Endeavor, please introduce yourself. Yeah, so we have several sources here that I'm going to be using for that we can talk about. And I guess one of the first things I like to do when I think of a political strategy is to think about what would happen in fiction. I think, quite personally, best way we can achieve the best way we can achieve our goals would be if you can check staff chat and I'll show you. An idea of having I've hosted the long link. Nobody cares about the ACLU and how trannies belong in sports. Here we go. It's called The Grand Plan, and I get it, it's fictional, but basically it's the idea that the Sith in Star Wars, they would slowly accumulate power over the years, although with us we're going to do it a lot quicker, to the point where they got an executive in power who then, used the system to abolish the system. Always having living two lives, basically, with the intention of destroying the Republic. I think what we could do is, we could just get some malicious actor in, who then does, the dissident rights equivalent of Order 66. But I don't know who it would be on. Maybe just the government in general. Well, we don't even have to run for... We can run as, like, a Joe Biden-type Democrat. It doesn't really matter with the party. You're not going to openly say, hey, I'm a dissident-right ethno-nationalist. You're not going to say that openly. You're going to hide your intentions. So, it's not... I hate it when the right... When American right-wingers are like, oh my god, this candidate didn't, call out a specific group. Therefore, he's controlled opposition. That's not how it works. They can't? Alright, let me check that. Give me a moment. Alright. Alright. Well, we don't even have to run for... We can run as, like, a Joe Biden-type Democrat. Okay, so they can hear me, they just can't hear you. Let me, change that. Give me a moment. Change the device.
Okay, no problem.
Speaker, just headphones. Alright, now speak.
Oh, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, it's displaying your signal through the mic. So yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I guess if you guys missed my intro, basically I'm Endeavor. I run a reactionary YouTube channel, and I discuss right-wing politics, culture, metapolitics, history, stuff like that. Anyway, but on to the topic. I think that in terms of like looking at the future of America and North America, because I'm from Canada, but I think it's a very similar situation. I think as nations, they're kind of they're over. They're not going to be this united. In 50 years ago, or even 20 or so. That's over and done with. But I think though that the question is, what's going to be pulled out of America or Canada? What's going to come in the Western Hemisphere for Western civilization? And in that respect, I am very optimistic that something of value will be pulled out of it. But I don't know what that's going to be. I do think, though, that really the goal right now needs to be building toward something like that. Yeah. Essentially setting the groundwork so that something like that will be possible in the future.
I guess you're right. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a ton of states, like, the U.S. is pretty good in that regard, because, the states have their own little governments, because this U.S. government isn't unitary, it's federal. So you're going to see different states, probably eventually form a coalition and leave the Union. Or maybe they'll just nullify everything the blue states try to put on them. Maybe eventually that'll lead to, either peaceful separation or war, and war's not exactly ideal, but it may be necessary. We want to avoid, a bloody civil war of, 10 million deaths as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously something that we certainly don't want to have happen, because the one thing I do really kind of despise is the Civil War LARPing. Because you have to understand that that's like what you want to avoid as much as possible, because that would essentially bring so much destruction upon the populace. And not only that, but as it stands right now, the right has no power whatsoever. So, in any kind of situation, the establishment would just crush any kind of resistance. So there needs to be actual institutional strength on our side in order to actually make things like separatism even possible.
Well, to be fair, the state governments of both all have their own militaries. We got a couple rogue governors we can put up a fight. Like, for example,
I do agree. I do agree that that locally you could actually have some local politics do seem to be a place that I do think, at least in America, you can be really effective. I think that from now, at least 2024 onward, it's going to be entirely hostile. It's going to be hostile to the interests that any of us would have. So, yeah, I think that having local action is really where it's at, and that's kind of where it needs to start.
I'm looking at the Texas National Guard. They have 20,000 troops, and their Air National Guard, they have MQ-9 Reaper fighter attack planes, F-16 Fighting Falcons. They have reconnaissance planes and transport. We get a couple of these people, we can get like 100,000 people, plus a large amount of people, and we don't want to go to war unless we absolutely have to. But let's say we had to, we could have a couple people backing us up with professional, it will be the distant right equivalent of the Ottoman Janissaries.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you might be putting the horse before, so the cart in front of the horse here, because I do think that the focus right now needs to be building institutional strength, building essentially political power in some way. I don't think you can go straight from saying, well, we should do this when we have this, because I think that's too far ahead.
Yeah, I always like to look far ahead. I guess that's just inherently.
I do too, but the problem is that you don't know how it's going to play out. This is why I don't like to speculate on what state is going to do this, what's going to happen here, because. Or at least I don't like to speculate on what's our ideal government going to look like. Where's our I don't know. I guess you could say ethno state or whatever. Where's that going to be? The reason I don't like to speculate on that stuff is because you don't know what's going to happen, and so much can happen in the.
We'll deal with it when the time comes.
You'll deal with it when the time comes. You have to work within the framework that you have right now, and I think that the framework right now is that. All institutional, well, at least all the majority of institutional strength is on the side of globalism. The corporations, the media, the education system, the governments, they're all pushing the globalist agenda, and that involves the destruction of Western civilization. It involves the replacement of the European diaspora in North America. It involves things like LGBT. Oh yeah, exactly. That is true, and it's the exact same thing in Europe. But in the context of what we're talking about, North America, it involves things like LGBT, feminism, and basically all that. That's all part of the wider push for globalism. I think that at least addressing that problem and creating a legitimate counter force to that has to be where we start. I think that Trump was a result of I think the natural reaction to globalism. He was the first real pushback in any meaningful way, because it looked like after 8 years of Obama, continue down the progressive path, but Trump happened, Brexit happened, populist parties are
Trump was a incompetent boomer. If we got someone who was maybe 40 years younger and not a billionaire, maybe we could have saved their country, but it's kind of too late at this point.
In terms of America as a whole, like I said, I don't think you're not going to have this one unified America. I think that's kind of over and done for, but
it could be
I think it's
if we fight and then we push everybody who well, for example, people who got amnesty, people who recently immigrated, we pushed them back after the fact. But we're not going to be from the start.
I think that the problem with that though is how much time versus how fast can you actually assemble a strong enough political force to do that. I just think it's you have to look at what you can pull out of it, you can pull out of America, and I do think there's plenty of potential, because I don't think for one second that all Westerners are just going to lie down and give away their countries for nothing. And you also have to remember that that in order to actually push they need control over every aspect of people's lives. This is why the media is trying so hard to force this egalitarian fantasy down everyone's throat. This is why, like, you'll see in the UK they'll ban quote unquote sexist advertising, meaning that any advertisement that shows any realistic portrayal of the genders, because they need to have like the constant. They just need egalitarianism to be shown constantly to people because it's so contrary to reality.
Yeah, definitely.
They can't let the mask slip one bit. So I mean, I don't necessarily think that Western civilization is done for, because it clearly isn't. In terms of like having the America of 1960, that's not going to happen.
I mean, I wish it could, but
I do too. But I mean, we have to be realistic, though. That's not going to happen. You have to look at what we're going to pull out of that. And I often think I give people the message that I want to recreate the past, because I don't. Because that, first of all, it's impossible, and second of all, you have to be looking forwards always. Now, I'm not saying like you need to be progressive. That's completely different. But you need to look towards what you can build in the future, and I definitely think that something can come out of that. Like, for example, some people like the Carolingians or the Romans or even the ancient Greeks. They don't exist in the same respect they did back then, but there still is a piece of them that survives today. Basically, my vision is that I don't think that the Canada of my grandfather is I need to accept the fact that it's over and done with. It's gone and it's not coming back. But my vision would be to create something where my grandfather and my great grandfather and myself are all reflected in whatever comes out of that, and that a piece of us lives on through that. So that's kind of my vision.
I think what you're saying is, so if people compare America to Rome, then what comes out of it if we win will be Eastern Rome, and Western Rome will just devolve into degeneracy and savagery.
Possibly, yeah, that's true. That could happen.
I mean, I guess I'm going to bring up a map at some point of what areas I think we could. If U.S., let's say it splits up, and I'm going to need to find a list of states that I think could stay and just wouldn't be allowed in. Just maybe they're too screwed over demographically, or maybe the people, even the whites there, are just too supportive of global homo and we won't let them. Here we go, let me fix this.
Yeah, there's plenty of nice states out there that, that are still conservative, majority white, have good quality of life, have good statistics when it comes to things like birth rates, and have good firearm laws. Like, for example, a state like Utah, it basically has all the positives that someone on the distant right would be looking for.
I guess we could do this. You see staff chat, #staff chat.
1 second. Yes. Okay.
We could do this. Damn. Here we go. Oh wait! Don't look at the thumbnail. That's misleading. Click on the link and you'll see what we could do.
Interactive map.
Yeah. Wait,
okay.
Do you see the red? Actually, do you see all the red and shit?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that I guess every state except California, Nevada, New Mexico. Oh yeah, we're gonna need to bring in Alaska, but every state except California, Nevada, New Mexico, Hawaii, Illinois, and the northeast coast like New York and New Jersey. I guess everything besides that.
Everything except for the left coast and the northeast.
Yeah, although Maine and New Hampshire are nice. I guess we could keep that. Because they're like 90.
I mean, like I guess the point I would make is that there's still plenty of nice spots in America. You have room to work with that.
What's good is that the left is heavily condensed in cities and not in the rural country.
Yeah, exactly.
If the left and the right, switch spots, we would be screwed. We would have no chance of survival because we don't have any of the land. We would just be...
What do you mean by switch spots?
Like, switched, you know, the right was urban and the left is rural.
Oh, unfortunately, that's where all the power is. Where all the money power is.
Well, money, yes, but, you know, resources and just land to make new urban areas rural.
Yeah. I think that places to be in America at this point are probably places like Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana.
I'd say there's some other good states. Like, for example, Wisconsin. That's a big state. That's 87% white. You have... I guess you have, you know, maybe a state like Missouri or Utah. I guess Ohio could work. The Midwest...
one group... Yeah. Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay, so, like, what are we looking at here? So what are we trying to, like, pull out of this?
Alright, so, I guess we can come with a list of states. Here we go. So I guess, I don't know, Arizona's debatable because you have, like, the border regions, but I guess we could get rid of the border towns and shit. And, you know, the Rio Grande Valley. But, so we have Arizona, I guess we have Utah. But, like, you know, the states in the Great Plains, like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. Yeah, they're safe. Alaska's safe. Texas, you'd have to cut off the area, like, in the south. And maybe could get rid of San Antonio. But, for the most part, Texas is okay. Iowa, Missouri, that's fine. And I get it, there are, you know, in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and Tennessee, there are a lot of, you know, African Americans there, but I guess they aren't growing in population that much. Like, the Hispanics are really gaining in a population. The amount of blacks in the U.S., like, percentage-wise shrunk, so I guess we can just deal with them. I guess you have the Appalachian areas, like Kentucky and West Virginia. Then you got Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, rural Illinois, most of Minnesota, I guess a bit of Colorado. Then you have the East Coast isn't entirely bad, but, you know, the Northeast Coast, yeah, I guess. Virginia, everything except D.C. and Pennsylvania, and then, you know, I guess the rural parts of Washington and Oregon. And then all that have about 384 electoral votes.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but you have to remember that, like, you can't really be thinking necessarily about, like, the presidential election because...
No, it's not like... No, I'm just using that as a map for what states we could accept into a new union.
I mean, yeah, that's fine, but, I guess the message I'd say I'd take out of that is that you just have plenty of places to work with. You know, if you're in America and you're, like, living in, like, California or New York or one of these shit lib areas, yeah, move to one of these states, you know, set up a life there, find community, create there. Look to influence people there, and I think that's kind of the way to go. I think that, one places like, I mean, you got to pick your battles. I mean, I think that one problem that many people have is that they'll try so hard with people who are never going to buy into it, into anything we say, regardless. I think that the answer is just pick an area that you can influence people locally, set up your life there, and that area turns positive for us.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess, you know, for example, even some of the big city areas are fine. Like, for example, Tarrant County, Texas. It's the third most populous, and its seat is Fort Worth. Fort Worth is a kind of a liberal city, but the county itself is a lot more conservative and basically the suburbs are heavily conservative. We don't need to get rid of every big city because the cities are the center of commerce, but places like LA, Portland, San Francisco, you know, New York, we're not going to keep those.
I mean, it's the same way. It's the same way in Canada. If we basically could, like, surgically remove Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto from the country,
yeah,
we'd be in a lot better situation.
I guess Alberta's a lot better.
Alberta, yes, rural Alberta is actually quite nice. It's pretty damn right wing. The problem is Edmonton and Calgary are becoming defied, if we want to say that, use that phrase.
You want to say browned, or just
Yeah, they're turning a progressive, multicultural, global homo cities with cultural Marxism and all that awful stuff. That stuff's popping up in those cities too. So, I think that in Canada we are in a more difficult situation since all of our we don't really have like a right wing movement like America does. We don't really have like that kind of. You don't have like a grassroots, but I am of the opinion that nothing that's grassroots succeeds. It needs to have leadership, money, and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, I do think that there are areas in Canada that are not as bad as places like Toronto, and Vancouver, but you'd have to exclude most of those cities.
Didn't you hear? Multiculturalism and infestation from foreigners is good because it's accelerationist, boy. I really hate these accelerationists who want to support someone like Andrew Yang or Bernie just to bring the country.
I fucking hate that. It's the stupidest thing on earth.
Yeah, let's make our country even worse off so we have even less to work with, instead of just trying to slow it down then stop it.
And then not only that, but like this argument that people are going to then take action when things are like that much worse is nonsense also. And not only that, but if you're the reason it's getting worse, they're not going to side with you. Even if tomorrow, like they said, okay, we're shutting down the entire internet and we're importing 100 million Africans. We're not going to just instantly win. Like there aren't going to be people like out in the street, like, and then finally taking over power and overthrowing the regime. That's not how it works. You need to have actually like
power structure,
infrastructure. Yes, you need a power structure in place. And this entire accelerationist argument, the ability to actually have a power structure. So yeah, people that talk about accelerationism, they're usually just too lazy to actually do anything.
Yeah. Give me my Andrew Yang bucks. I want $1,000 a month to buy computer games, and into $1,000 a month for computer games to destroy the West so we can rebuild it, and shit ton of really disgusting hentai. That's what I've noticed. There's a lot of people in the dissident right who tend to be kind of degenerate, especially in the quotation marks trad community. You know what I'm talking about? Like a lot of these weebs with Andrew Yang hats on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that I even made a video on this. It's that holding an ideological position is not the same as living by it. And you can say like you're right wing. You can say that you're you can apply all these labels to yourself, but if you're not actually living a non-degenerate lifestyle, and look, I don't even, and it doesn't even mean you need to be a Puritan. Like I'm not saying like you should have 7 children by the time you're 25, and your wife needs to be this stay-at-home housewife, and you to be this farmer on this. Like obviously not. I'm not saying that because it's obviously just not realistic. But at the same time, you shouldn't be like spending your entire day inside playing games. You should be exercising. You should be reading. You should be bettering yourself. You
shouldn't be posting lewd pics of anime chicks on Instagram.
Oh, yeah. One thing I posted on Twitter is that I think that anyone who unironically uses the phrase waifu should be banned from the internet for their own good.
Burn at the stake, more like it, but I guess we can settle that. Now, another thing, I noticed a lot of people in the, do you know the server jfg.world?
Yeah, I was on it, but on my old account, I got banned. My old account was banned, but I'll probably rejoin at some point. But yeah, I know.
I've noticed a lot of the people there tend to how do I put this? They tend to, I think there's an issue with the dissident right now that especially in that server, which is like, a cult of personality, like, having an attachment and a cult of personality around dissident right leaders, like, a certain someone who inherited a multi-million-dollar inheritance. I don't want to say his name, because, you know what I'm talking about?
Someone who inherited a multi-million-dollar what?
Okay, Richard Spencer, people like that,
Okay,
JF
yeah.
himself. We don't need a cult of personality. We don't need to make this a subculture. We need to make this a movement that can win.
Yeah, exactly.
I
mean, that's...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I interrupted you when you were about to speak, so...
Oh, no, what I was going to say was Millennial Woes had actually talked about that in a speech. What he said was that, you can't be a subculture that's just, like, happy with their own kind of little corner on the internet and expect to actually have any difference. Because if that's your... if that's all that it becomes, then time waiting for the end to come. So...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you are right that, like, you have to understand that, like, it's not about figureheads, because, look, any movement, figureheads come and go. If you look at the progressive movement, they weren't the same people in the 1960s as today. They don't have the same subcultures that they have then. Movement that's been just chugging along for 50 years, and yes, I know it's with the backing of the institutions, it's with the backing of global capital, but at the same time, you have to understand that movements kind of take on a life of their own. They're not really linked to one figure, and yeah, that is a problem that you pointed out.
Yeah, and also I guess there's an issue where a lot of the dissident right tends to get complacent with the type of content they seem to be talking about. Like, let me bring up an example. The Public Space, episode 802. I don't want to see people, making hundreds of episodes of podcasts and thinking they're going to change something. I want to see them, become economic leaders, maybe run for office. I mean, the political system is a sham, of course, but, I guess, just spreading your message to the masses in case we to build the infrastructure. People are making their own businesses, I don't want to see people who have a podcast that's been going daily with the same message and rewind for the past 2 years. I really don't like when movements get complacent.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's kind of why I don't ever want anyone to think that the world by making a podcast or something like that. And that's not saying you shouldn't do it. You should, but and also there's only a certain amount of space in the market for it. You don't need hundreds of people doing the same thing. It has to go IRL eventually, or sooner rather than later, and that's really how you actually make change. And I mean, I also kind of want I want to do is to let people know, like, look, you're probably not going to be this great leader who leads who saves the West and leads us on to the path of victory. You're there's only going to be a few of those people, and it's probably not going to be me. It's probably not going to be you. So it's the best you can do is first of all, live up to your ideals, and secondly, people in your community, do something local. And if that's what you're doing, then you're doing a good job. But the thing is that, you're as long as you're doing something, then that's the best that you can really ask for. But the problem is you can't get too comfortable in as someone who just watches YouTube videos daily, doesn't ever really take action, and B, you can't unrealistic about it. You can't think that you're going to be this great hero, because that's not going to happen. And you really just need to focus on what you can do personally, I think.
I guess so. Let me think. A good example like that. well, there's a lot of people who tend to think, okay, I'm going to go into the country, have several kids, and be like Varg. That doesn't really work either. You have to know your place, but you still have to be willing to contribute something besides, okay, I'm having 8 children. And, I mean, I don't like the Varg system of retreating out of society and, going into a rural area and raising, 8 children or 10 or...
At first, not only that, but you're not even gonna you have to be realistic. You're probably not gonna have 8 children.
Well, even if you do,
I mean,
it's not really beneficial in any way.
Well, it is beneficial.
I mean, yeah, it is, but not like...
It's not really... it's just not realistic. Like,
diminishing returns.
Focus on...
Diminishing returns after, say, maybe 5.
Well, I think that, look, if you can do that, then more power to you. I mean, the Mormons are doing it.
The Amish.
And they have a damn strong, the reason I'm so interested in the state of Utah is because they're just doing everything right there. They have one of the highest birth rates, one of the most religious populations. They have one of the lowest rates of divorce, one of the lowest rates of illegitimate births, one of the highest qualities of life, one of the youngest populations, and it's also one of the most homogenous white states. I think it's like 87%.
Yeah,
seem to be just doing everything right.
Unfortunately, its neighbor Colorado isn't doing so well. Colorado, I mean, it's still, it's like 80% white, but the issue is that a lot of people there are degenerate, especially with all the druggies that came in.
The reason I bring up Utah is, if that's what, these people, these communities are contributing toward the, the continuation of a healthy... of a healthy Western civilization. So,
definitely.
If you can do that, then
go ahead.
You're doing your part.
Yes. What I'm just saying is,
go ahead.
If there's going to be a conflict, don't be like don't live in a shire when the War of the Rings is going on. That's all my point. If you get that analogy, but you have the Amish.
And at the same time, though, you don't want, if that ever happened, you wouldn't want, the last place you'd want to be is one of those big cities.
Yeah, well, I'm saying you'd be on the front lines. And obviously this is metaphorical. It could be literal. I mean, we're not literally Middle Earth, but I think we all know what I mean by this. But also, when you mention the Mormons, I live near a group of people who tend to have a birth rate of 7 and are probably even better than the Mormons in a lot of these metrics. It's the Amish. The Amish? You know the Amish, the people from Lancaster County, Dutch Americans.
Yeah, I know them.
Oh yeah, you said it like the Amish, like you were asking a question.
No, because I thought that's who you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, let's see. They have a birth rate of 7. They are the most reactionary people I've ever met in terms of just by living it. They don't even use public transport. They are allowed to go in cars. They just can't drive them. They shun children who tend to rebel. They live in these farms, rejecting modernity and every single conceivable way. And they make up about 60% of the population growth in Lancaster County, which is one of the biggest counties in my state, with 700,000 people. And they're a small minority.
They're beating it.
Yep.
Yeah, they're crushing modernity.
I mean, obviously, I can't live up to that. I plan to work in technology anyway, so I can't really, I have to...
I mean, it's an extreme example, but no one's saying, you have to go to that extent, but, another thing that I think people should do is just be less consumeristic. If you get interested in reading books and reading history, literature, and getting interested in your own culture, one thing that you find is that it makes you a lot less consumeristic. I rarely ever buy video games anymore. I rarely ever pay to go see a movie. I never buy brand name clothing or anything like that. And you save so much. You save so much more money. Your entertainment essentially becomes free. Money to spend on things that matter. Yeah, exactly. You don't need to be paying for that stuff anyway. But
I buy 2 or 3 games a year at this point.
Exactly. Because that's just one way to become a lot less consumeristic, and there's 2 benefits to that. One, it keeps your eye on the prize, that you're not distracted by things like
my heavily
what are
modded
these?
Skyrim with 1,000 mods and graphics extender and shit.
You're not being distracted by Star Wars or some shit like that. And also you have so much more money to actually invest in things that matter, like your living conditions, or you have money for savings and all this stuff. That's one thing that improved greatly, is that I hardly ever spend money on consumer goods anymore, because embracing reactionary ideas has made me a lot less consumeristic.
I mean, oh my god, Star Wars, that's like a perfect example. I remember, well, I don't remember this, but apparently they got rid of all the novels and shit, and they made it a lot more simplified, for the, like Star Wars now, I don't like, talk about, franchises that are dead, but it used to be great. I guess, now they kind of got rid of all the good stuff, and they made it, a rehash. It became peak consumeristic, and, the people who watch it now tend to have a much lower level of testosterone and a much lower intelligence quotient, because they haven't gotten original. It's a symptom of Hollywood in general.
Well, because everything has to be paused these days. Kind of like I said earlier, everything needs to be forcing the progressive agenda, because it's something that's so anti-human that they need to just constantly hold up this facade. That's why all this entertainment has to have it always has to have either a minority lead, or it needs to have some woman who can kick the ass of 10, 6, like a 5'2" woman who can kick the ass of 10 6 feet tall men.
Oh god, that kind of reminds me of the new Thor movie that's coming out, where they're having Natalie Portman, who's gonna for some reason be able to kick the asses of men who are 6'6", and she's 5'2".
Exactly, and I mean they just need to force this crap into everything, because there's a wider societal
they're pushing for societal
push
change.
going on. Push for societal change going on.
Yep.
And don't think of it like that. The other mistake that people have is that they think that, it's because some cat ladies are on the HR staff, or that there's some feminists writing the script. No, that's not why. It's because of woke capital. It's because those in positions of power, those with the money, is pushed through the culture, because there's a wider societal push going on, and that's why this is happening. Because they have a project ongoing, and this involves things like the feminization of men, the Great Replacement, homosexuality, and all this crap that we don't like.
Yeah,
and that's why that's being pushed.
Now, we got to around 50 minutes, so I guess the final thing we can talk about is the eradication of American culture, of American and Canadian cultural heroes. Labeling people, I get it's a boomer point. When I was a kid, I remember about the Founding Fathers, and everyone was a proud American. But it's still true, they're removing murals of, George Washington because he was a slave owner, and, they want to get rid of Confederate statues. I don't know if there's any Canadian folk heroes who...
It's the exact same. They're going after people like John A. Macdonald. He's our, George Washington, if you don't know. He was our first prime minister. They're taking down statues of British generals and basically everything. It might be even to a worse extent here. Any, white European icon is under attack, basically, right now.
Yeah, and I don't get it when people like to hold, historical figures and modern standards. Even when I was a liberal, I never really did that. I guess a lot of the main issue is that if you look at it logically, a lot of leftists tend to act neurotic, but they're programmed this way. I mean, no person would act like that unless they're conditioned to, try to destroy racism at all costs by tearing down statues that are 200 years old and been in a public park. Unless we tear down every single thing, every single hierarchy, every single thing that make Western civilization great, the alt-right will be emboldened, and we have to stop that. It's
there's two forces at work here. One is the cultural one, which is essentially the post-war myth, the kind of the anti-white narrative, the narrative that any Europeans is akin to Nazism, which is the ultimate evil, and that basically any pro-Western, any figure needs to eventually be demonized unless they were anti-white, because basically morality has been constructed for us that places Western man as the ultimate evil. That's the one. That's like the cultural push going on, and that's the stuff that you'd see from the shit libs in places like MSNBC and Huffington Post and stuff like that. The other one is the economic one, and this goes back to the global homo. That's like the one. That's what's pushing the cultural one, and the reason they need to remove people like George Washington or John A. Macdonald, they need to remove all of them, is because their agenda is to their agenda is to replace the European population. So they need to remove any amount of claim that they have to their land. So they need to say that anyone can be an English person in England, but only black people can be Africans. I mean, the example that people bring up from the United Kingdom is there's a guy there called David Lammy. He's some black activist politician, and the example they bring up is that he's Caribbean, African, and English at the same time. But English people in England are only English, and but everyone else can be too. It's the same in America and Canada. It's like your country belongs to everyone. Anyone can be your identity, but their identities are only belong to them. And don't you dare try to incorporate anything from that they've created into your own.
Well, if you look at it from a logical level, just in a pure logical level, and I hate using the word logic because it makes me sound like I'm a rational skeptic. But if you look at it, at a logical level, just this dichotomy, this framework seems either I can't tell if it's sociopathic or psychopathic. Like it was constructed by malicious psychopaths. At least you think that until you realize that it was intentional. It wasn't because they were insane and made an incoherent ideology that doesn't make any sense. It was planned.
Oh yes, absolutely, I agree. It was.
Although I do wish I think the architects of leftism and global homo tend to be kind of arrogant. I think that arrogance is going to bring them down in the end.
Oh, I think it is, because they're going way too fast with this. Like 5 years ago, we got to watch like the movie Skyfall, James Bond, but now might have been longer than 5 years ago, but now we're getting a black James Bond, a black 007 who probably puts James Bond in his place for mansplaining or some bullshit like that, and that's all over the course of the last I'd say since 2012. I mean, if you had asked me back in 2012 what a transgender person was, I wouldn't have understood any of this stuff. Now it's illegal to be against it in many respects.
If you ask me,
they're going way too fast.
If you asked me in freaking 2016 or 2017 what a child drag queen was, I would have no clue. I mean,
exactly,
and now just 2 years later, it's accelerating at an accelerated pace. Like every year, the amount of change is faster and faster in the next year. Like the amount of push for the stairway into degeneracy has now become a slope, and sooner or later, it's going to become a pit. Think of it like a graph. The slope, where the higher the higher the y-coordinate is, the closer it is to the ultimate goal of the push to degeneracy. It starts off slow, then slowly it accelerates, and then eventually it's going like every year it gets more and more degenerate and disgusting in the last at an increasing pace. And this is what I don't like about accelerationists. We're already accelerating. You have to stop it. You can't just assume people are going to wake up.
Exactly. It's already. We want our enemies to accelerate. We don't want us to be the ones to accelerate the negative effects, because that gets people pissed off at them, not at us. I mean, one thing that's encouraging is if you look at how turn against things like LGBT, for example, like after the the Pride Month this year and the Pride Queen, and it being promoted by every single powerful institution, no one is no one believes anymore that can honestly say that they're these oppressed victims who are trying to find acceptance. No, they're the ones in power, and they're the ones forcing the shit down everyone else's throat. That's just the reality, because it's now just absolutely everywhere. I mean, you can't go outside without seeing it.
It's like I was reading a book, Rachel Carson, The Silent Spring, about how pesticides and chemicals are everywhere and everybody's ingested them. Global Homo is the same thing. Everybody, it's impossible to avoid it now. But I guess we reached the 1 hour mark. I need to do some summer reading work and a tutor. So I guess we can end it here.
Okay, well, no problem.
All right,
thanks for having me on.
I'm gonna end the stream, then we can talk for a little bit post stream. All right.
Okay, no problem.